Arkansas basketball showed us a glimmer of hope early in the week, but then they had it doused this past weekend in a poor performance against South Carolina. Also, what is next for this Arkansas men's basketball team? We'll talk about that. All the while, Arkansas Gymnastics continues to set records early on in this season. Let's talk about that in this week's episode.
You hear that? You hear that? That's special. There's a lot of lions, tigers, and bears, but there ain't but one razorback.
Man, for maybe the win. I think he just made SportsCenter again.
Arkansas is in hog heaven. They won the first ever national championship.
All I want you to do tonight is play your best. Don't worry about making a mistake. You can make a mistake, that's fine, as long as you're going 100 miles an hour.
Welcome into episode 62 of the Woo Pig Weekly Podcast, your source for all things Arkansas Razorbacks. Episode 62 is brought to you by Homefield. Go check them out. They're the home of premium vintage collegiate apparel, fantastic collections. You know, they're constantly adding new stuff, so be on the lookout for new Arkansas gears. They add that periodically. Fantastic gear. You can use the promo code Variety Sports in all caps to receive 15% off your order. Go check them out. And, you know, we'll jump right in here. Arkansas football news, not really anything big to talk about. No portal news action this weekend. Kind of things are all silent, if you will. I know they're still out recruiting and whatnot, but they've really started up strength and conditioning so far. You know, you have spring practice. It's going to start up beginning of March. But until then, you know, we'll keep you updated as we get the news. But, you know, all silent on the transfer portal front. You know, no news from any additional guys deciding to leave or anything of that nature. So as we know right now, they're working on getting ready to finalize kind of the offense and start installing whatnot when spring practice gets here. And, you know, before we know it, dead period will be here right before spring practice starts up. So anything else you got to add there, Seth?
Nope, nothing crazy. Got a chance to catch up with Addison Nichols again this past weekend, which was a really good time. And he shared a little bit of kind of some of the things that they've been doing in some of their strength and conditioning sessions. That it's been a pretty grueling couple of weeks. So that's a good thing to hear from a fan's perspective, that the guys are out there working hard and grinding it out and trying to bulk up, put on muscle, strengthen up, things of that nature. So fun conversation with him for sure, just to kind of get a good gauge perspective on where things are at on the strength and conditioning side of things. So nothing other than that, though. It's kind of been quiet, to your point.
Yeah. I mean, if you follow the Arkansas football Twitter X page, you know, they had a quick clip video where they showed the guys doing some strength conditioning out in the snow over the weekend with all the snow. So, you know, it's cool to see that. But for the most part, I think they've been staying inside the nice indoor practice facility. Like I said, working hard, doing a lot of strength and conditioning, getting ready for spring practice. That way, you know, everybody's in shape, ready to go once we get ready to install this Petrino offense. And so we'll just jump right over into basketball news, where Arkansas men's basketball, kind of like I said in the intro, you know, kind of gave some hope here, and they got a close win, 78-77 over a Texas A&M team that was kind of coming off of a high, beating Kentucky the game before Arkansas. And so, you know, they had to feel pretty good coming into Fayetteville with a team that's been struggling. And Arkansas, you know, had a fantastic first half, kind of came out in traditional Arkansas fashion, slow start the second half, kind of let them get back into it, but ultimately pulled this one out with the last second shot from Tremont Mark. You know, great win for Arkansas. And as we'll talk about here in a little bit, you know, this success didn't stay maintained for long, but we'll jump into quick stats here. Tremont Mark did everything for Arkansas, leading all scores with 35 points. You had L. Ellis with 15 points, and Trevor Brazile and Jeremiah Davenport with 8 points each as well. And then on the rebounding side of things, you had Devo Davis and L. Ellis tied for leading rebounders with 6, followed up with Tremont Mark, Shannon Lawson, and Trevor Brazile with 5 rebounds each. When you talk about shooting, Arkansas shot the ball pretty well in this game. They shot 39.2% from the field, going 20 of 51. They shot 36.8% from the three-point line, going 7 of 19, and 77.5% from the free throw line, going 31 of 40. So a good game overall. You kind of saw a glimpse of what you would think this team is kind of really putting things together, if you will. Really was a tough, hard-fought win that, you know, you'd think would be the spark needed to kind of start building on some success. And, we kind of, in the first half anyway, for sure, I felt like we kind of got glimpses of that team we saw, preseason that beat Purdue, the team that beat Duke, but then you come out in the second half and have a poor performance, let them get back in the game. I don't know. It just perplexes me on, what is this team doing?
Yeah, it's one of the most confusing things that I've seen in a while because you and I talked about this game before it happened with not necessarily high hopes that we were going to be able to pull out a win, especially considering how good Texas A&M had looked up until that point. So being able to get a win here was great. However, to kind of to your point, the way it happened just didn't feel normal. We played a great first half. I'm not sure, but at one point we had an 18-point lead, if I remember correctly, somewhere around in there. And just kind of let A&M chip away, chip away, chip away. We had a couple of bad possessions, some turnovers. That kind of let them get back into it, and we took some bad shots later in the second half. Seemed like we were settling. So, in a sense, took our foot off the gas in a way. And realistically, just seems like this team doesn't know how to win games. Whether they're down big, whether they're up big, they don't know how to maintain a lead if they have one. And then a lot of the times, if we get down big, they have a hard time providing enough defensive pressure to try to chip away, kind of how A&M did against us, and get back into a game to potentially steal one. So, yeah, it's hard to put your finger on exactly where the issues are all coming from because, you look back earlier in the year and L. Ellis, for example, started out fairly strong, kind of went on a cold spell, played some poor defense, found himself on the bench quite a bit. He had a pretty good game against A&M, and then we'll break it down here in a minute against South Carolina. Had a decent game against them as well. Saw a lot more minutes. His effort was there. Obviously, him being able to tie as the leading rebounder with 6 shows that he's contributing outside of just scoring. So that was another thing that I think contributed to him playing as much as he did is he was getting valuable minutes out there, and his plus minus was pretty solid. So somebody like that being able to bounce back was a good thing, but it does definitely make you scratch your head on where is the consistency. You're not really getting it from anybody besides Tremont Mark at this point, whether it's scoring, rebounding, defense, steals, blocks. I mean, pretty much all the stats. It seems like everyone is all over the place every single week. You never really know what you're going to get. Caleb Battle was one of our leading scorers to start the year and has been virtually non-existent the last 4 or 5 games. So that's kind of been a head scratcher. I know he's had some health issues. I know he wasn't 100% in some of the games that he's even been playing in recently. So that's got to have some effect. But a lot of those things all combine together to be very, very much confounding from a fan's perspective, kind of looking in from the outside. We don't know all the details, that go on in practice and off the court that may be limiting guys' playing times and things like that. That's something everybody can speculate on. But just from what we see on the court, it's a confusing product right now. Whereas, we put together a fantastic first half against A&M, a horrible second half that was redeemed by a shot at the buzzer to win it, which was, really exciting and fun to win it in that fashion, but it should have never been there. We should have won this game by 15, 20 points. So definitely mixed feelings. And then it kind of cascaded into the South Carolina game where we didn't get off to a good start at all. And the entire game was pretty much out of hand from the tip. So, very confusing basketball right now. Like I said, don't know what to put your finger on exactly what would fix the issues. I don't think there is anything that will fix the issues outside of just getting more consistent play from pretty much the entire roster. When we've talked about it week in, week out, the effort on defense sometimes seems good on several possessions in a row and then very, very lax on several possessions in a row. And I don't know how you coach that out of them, frankly.
Yeah, I mean that's true, and that's all good points. I mean, and a couple of things I want to hit on that you kind of mentioned too. It seems like this team, they do well when they have a lead, but it seems like when teams start chipping away and make this game close or even take the lead, they don't know how to respond properly. And I tend to notice, and I mean, it's even been historical fashion with Arkansas teams in general, not even just under Coach Muss. It seems like historically Arkansas seems to, whenever they get down or the game gets close, have a tendency to start shooting a lot more threes because I guess they are getting worried that their lead is being cut down. So then they don't even go to what's normal and drive to the basket. They just like go down and try to find a or a long range, mid range, and they're going away from what we're good at, and that's a driving, attacking basketball team. And so it's just very, Arkansas-esque if you followed Arkansas basketball for any amount of time. But then if you also talk about it, the other problem I'm seeing is rebounding. When you have two guards leading your rebounding, that's a problem. I feel like, Chandler Lawson, Trevor Brazile, Jalen Graham, guys like that, they need to be more offensive when it comes to or tougher when it comes to rebounding and get in there and fight for those balls. It seems like they're just giving up too easily or getting outmatched. I don't know what it is. I don't know if they need to work on some strength training or whatever it is. Brazil's not the biggest guy, and plays our 4-5 spot, and he's more of a hybrid type player, not your traditional big man. We don't have one of those, and I think you're starting to see that's a problem for Arkansas. They don't have a true big man. Look at half these teams we play. They have true bigs that can go in there and rebound and fight for the ball. Whereas, yeah, Brazil's got the hops and whatnot, but when it comes to getting in there and muscling around, he just doesn't have what it takes. And, I don't know if there's just an effort piece, like they see, okay, the shot goes up, let's try to get back on defense instead of rebounding the ball, or even I've seen the ball get tipped up and batted around. And, everybody just seems to, after the shot leaves, everybody starts going back instead of, if we would have had guys in the free throw line in the paint area and balls get batted up, we could have had some offensive rebounds and potential putbacks. So it's just very weird that this team is struggling in so many areas. But like I said, when you have your two guards leading and rebounding, that kind of shows some problems, a piece of the puzzle, if you will.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that's kind of been something that's plagued us most of the year. We've had some games where there's been a couple of good showings from Chandler Lawson, for example, where he's gotten 12 or 14 boards in a game, but it doesn't seem like it's a consistent thing that happens. And like I said, that's an area where we're struggling in a lot of different facets to find consistency in scoring, consistency in rebounding from players, various players, not just as a team. Consistency in defensive effort, and realistically, I think a lot of the rebounding issues come down to maybe size to an extent, but then kind of to what you hit on there about players almost being out of position. Obviously, for offensive rebounds, if you're starting to kind of try to cheat and get back a little early for a defensive possession, which is understandable, you're out of position for the rebound. But then you kind of turn that down on the other side of the court, and if you're out of position on a defensive rebound and you're allowing the offensive rebounds, then that's hurting you twice as much in a sense. And I think I see that happen quite often where we're a little undersized, so positioning makes all the difference in the world, and we're failing at that as well on boxing out or being a little bit too far under the rim potentially for any of those kind of bounce out type rebounds. So the positioning is a lot of it. And I think that definitely does coincide with size, is we're getting pushed around a little bit down low from time to time to fight for that rebounding position. So like I said, there is a lot of things that you can sort of point fingers at. No one thing is really the smoking gun issue, I don't think, right now. It's just there's a lot of flaws, I think, in our overall scheming and execution on a lot of different facets. And it just hurts to see that. This game was a great game where we got to the free throw line a lot. So I thought we did a pretty good job actually attacking the rim. And I think it's the only reason that we had the lead that we did in the first half is how aggressive we were playing to get to the basket. And to your point, we kind of got away from that in the second half as they were chipping away at the lead. And that resulted in a way closer game than it should have been. But all in all, making 31 out of your 40 free throw attempts is a pretty solid number. Getting 40 free throw attempts is also a solid number. So there's some things there to maybe when you're going back and watching film over the last couple of games, hey, we need to emulate that That's a lot of free points. That's getting a lot of guys into foul trouble to, affect the other team's rotation. Things like that can help you win games, even when your defensive consistency, your scoring pieces outside of Mark obviously are up and down and struggling and things of that nature. You've gotta fight those things with scheming, like trying to get down low, get to the rim, and force guys into foul trouble. That's the only way you can really kind of fight through those types of scenarios. And when we get out of that mentality, like you said, it normally doesn't result in good things. And I think the second half of this game definitely carried us over into the South Carolina game. And like we said earlier, that game did not go very well at all from the beginning. So we can jump into that one whenever you're ready. It was rough.
Yeah, yeah. Well, would you go ahead and jump into it? Like you said, it's not. It didn't get better in this game. They didn't really. It seemed like they still came back out traditional Arkansas, like we've seen them slow starting. Like you said earlier from the tip, it didn't seem like we were in it. Especially after a big win that Arkansas, frankly, really needed against A&M, and then to bounce back with falling flat, if you will. It's just weird for this team. They lost to South Carolina 77-64. They just came in and really dominated. And, you had leading scorers of this game. Tremont Mark only had 18 points, which is low scoring for him. He's usually a guy that has 20 plus. He's the guy that's been carrying this team, and even he struggled. And I think you're going to start seeing that with teams knowing he's our go-to guy. They're going to really focus in on him and force other guys to score. And I think that's what you see happening here. You had L. Ellis following him up with 9 points, and then Devo Davis and Jeremiah Davenport had 8 each. And, when you have guys, your top 3, 4 leading scorers having less than or single digit points, you're not going to win very many basketball games that way. And then, like we said, you jump over to rebounding a little bit better as far as personnel wise. You had Shannon Lawson lead the way with 7, followed by Trevor Brazil with 6. So you saw guys like we just talked about those big men getting involved there, and then Devo Davis with 3. But still, I want to see some guys with double-digit rebounds. Like, look at what our women's team is doing. They have consistently double-digit rebounding. I know it's women's basketball, but you can't discredit. Like, their bigs are doing what their bigs are supposed to and rebounding the ball at a high efficiency rate. And then you look at Arkansas shooting. Not the best shooting night either. 37%, 37.1% from the field, 23 of 62 is not terrible. But then 27.8% from the three-point line, 5 of 18. Arkansas, that's not bad. It's better than some nights we've had. And then 81.3% from the free throw line, going 13 out of 16. You like the high efficiency free throws, but you only got to the line 16 times compared to the previous game, where you got to the line 40 times. That's a big difference. And it really just seems like the game planning was a complete 360. Don't try to attack the basket when that's really the type of offense Muss likes to have, a driving, attacking the basket type of team and drawing free throws. I think I saw a stat. Arkansas leads at least the SEC, maybe even the country, in free throws attempted and shot. Yet we're struggling to win games. It just makes no sense. And I know, we feel the struggle, so Muss has got to feel that struggle even more. I'm pretty sure there's a lot of nights in the pool house for him this season so far, and you hate to see that, but I honestly don't know at this point. I would say we're about midway through the season now, and I don't know if this team can be fixed. I think, you almost kind of got to set your expectations now of we're most likely not going to make the NCAA tournament. We might be lucky to make some NIT tournament appearance. Who knows at this point with the up and down, unless something dramatic changes and Arkansas goes on a big run tear throughout the rest of SEC play. I don't see it. I know a lot of people said, oh, well, last year and the year before we started out 1-5 in SEC play and, we still made the tournament. Yes, but that to an extent, but this is a completely different team that it just seems like they can't find any cohesion. I want to make the point, Muss even said after the game, this team doesn't seem connected at all. And you see that. stat I want to bring up is you look at the assists. That kind of shows how connected your team is, being able to find guys and get those extra buckets. South Carolina had 20 assists in the game. We had 9. Single digit assists. And statistically, we've talked about it on this show before. If Arkansas can get 14 to 15 assists or more, then more than likely we win those games. Well, that just shows you're not sharing the ball. It doesn't seem like you're connected with your teammates. That's a lot we just threw out there. So, what do you think there, Seth?
I think the biggest thing, especially around the assists, that's something that we need to hit on is what that ends up doing is you don't get any of the easy open spot up shots. So most of your shots are off the dribble, and those are very often the more contested shots, the more difficult shots. In this game, especially, it seemed like we took a ton of fall away, mid range, turnaround style jump shots. That's why the free throw attempts was low, and also why the 3-point attempts was kind of low. We would kind of get on the elbows, which Devo and Tremont Mark both love that range type of shot, but they just weren't falling. They were taking a lot of difficult shots. I think South Carolina had a pretty good snuffed out game plan on how to affect Tremont Mark and force him in the opposite directions than where he wanted to go. And that basically when that occurs, he's not able to get to the basket very well. He likes to go left, and they were affecting that a lot. And so you'd see him kind of take those turnaround jump shots whenever he wasn't able to blow by somebody. And some of them fell, some of them didn't. But you could tell that we were settling a lot for kind of those mid-range twos, not being quite as aggressive on getting to the basket. And then, to your point, not finding each other for open shots in the passing game for those assists, whether it's guys cutting down the baseline, finding lanes to the basket and things like that, or drive-ins and kickouts to catch an open three or something like that. They're just not happening right now. And there's a lot of things that cause that. Obviously, guys missing some of those shots is part of it, because there were some opportunities for more assists to have happened. We just missed the shots. But on the top of that, though, when you really look at it from the top down, like they're struggling to find each other in rhythm, and we don't move very well as a team off the ball to provide passers an open person to pass the ball to that can take that shot, from a catch and shoot type of scenario. That's not happening as much as it should either. So there's several things that are stacking up there that I think affect our chemistry on spot up shooting off of the ball, where you're catch and shoot, things that are catch and drive, something like that. It's just not happening at the rate that it used to in some previous Musselman coach teams. I think part of it is the personnel you have. You don't have a guy like Anthony Black. That's the NBA first round talent who is lighting it up in the NBA right now. That's facilitating things. I think that's hurting us more than anybody realized it would. And then I think a little bit of it really does boil down to the difference in this team compared to previous teams. All of the record things are very similar. You hashed it out that, we're 1-5 in conference play to start, things like that have been similar to Musselman teams in the past. However, you could see some of the chemistry developing between the team at this point in the year in years past. Part of it due to the fact he had kind of figured out the 7, 8, 9 guys that he really wanted to go with, and they were kind of on the verge of starting to build cohesion. You could see it happening. They were passing the eye test in that regard. That's not happening right now. We played 14 guys in this game. I mean, I think that is the difference from the visual perspective that maybe doesn't show up on stats and in the win metrics. That's what's different about this team compared to previous Musselman teams. And at one point in the season, I thought it was going to be our strength. And at this point in the season, with the way the wins aren't happening due to it, I think it might actually be our weakness. Is there's no real leader on the floor that's able to kind of run the offense or anything like that to provide those open shots and get guys good looks and direct traffic and call plays. And part of that is because you're kind of trying to play the point by committee right now between Al Ellis, Devo, Blocker, Minifield. None of it's really stuck very well with any of them. You've had some highlights from a few of them, Leighton Blocker, Al Ellis, for example, these last couple of games, but nothing where anybody's really stepping up and saying, hey, I am the point guard of this team that facilitates this offense. It's not there. At this point in the year, I'm just not sure it's going to be there. You have 4 guys that have kind of been vying for that spot, and Musselman hasn't seen enough consistency out of any of them to really say, hey, yes, this is your team to lead from a point guard's perspective. Whereas in years past, even if we had early season struggles or something, you could see that development. You're not seeing it right now, and that's why I think this is going to be a different year than previous years, where the turnaround that everybody is praying that it's coming. I don't think it's going to be the sharp turnaround that we've had in the last couple of seasons, where they've righted the ship and made significant runs in the latter half of our SEC schedule and the SEC tournament to get a decent seed. It could happen. I don't have as strong of a feeling about it happening with this squad, with the way we're up, down, all over the place compared to previous years. I thought the depth was our strength, and I don't think it's a problem. I think it is affecting Musselman's decision-making on how to get the guys to form the chemistry that we've had the last couple of seasons, with how many people he's trying to shuffle in and shuffle out to find somebody with a hot hand. So he's got an impossible job. I'm not blaming it on anybody specifically, especially not Musselman. It's an impossible job, but there's my long-winded take on the situation.
Hey, that's fair. That's good points. I mean, you look at it, yeah. We thought going into the year, oh, we have so much depth that it's going to be so nice to have your 1As and 1Bs coming in, rotating out, and things of that nature. But like you said, at this point, there's been no consistently, because you're seeing constant changes in different guys, different starting lineups. And like you said, 14 guys playing in one game is unheard of for a Musselman team. Usually he likes to stick to 7 or 8, 9 if you're lucky on a good night, if you will. So like you said, I don't think we're going to I don't expect to see the turnaround that we've had in seasons past. And you know what? That's okay. Like we said before, Musselman's working hard at this for what he's done for this program in this state. Not making excuses in a sense, but everybody has a bad year. Even the best coaches. Look at Coach Cal at Kentucky's had a bad year or two. Kansas has had a bad year. You think of these top basketball programs, and this may just be it. The pieces, like Seth said in an episode or two ago, sometimes the portal helps you out, and then sometimes it comes back and bites you. And maybe this is a time where it was almost too tough to get guys to mesh together with all the new faces. We may see returners next year from this team that come back again, and maybe they feel more meshed, if you will, because you'll be losing a few guys like Trevor Brazil is probably going to go to the draft. You're going to lose Makai Mitchell due to eligibility, LLS eligibility. You're going to get some younger guys like Layden Blocker back. Bayfall hopefully has some development in the offseason. Maybe Khalif Battle comes back. I don't know. You're losing Devo eligibility wise. So you're losing several pieces that have been your experienced pieces. And it's going to be interesting to see where Musselman goes next year. We know we got a couple of, 4-star guys already committed for next year's season. So it could be a young team next year. We'll have to see. But who knows what the rest of the season holds. Maybe Arkansas pulls a miracle turnaround, but maybe they don't. But I think now is the point where you kind of can start tempering your expectations for any postseason activity. And so that we'll take a quick break here, and we'll be back to give you the update and the latest on Arkansas women's basketball.
You know what I like? I like to be comfortable. I also love representing my favorite sports teams. And in the Clutch, I am able to have the best of both worlds. In the Clutch Apparel is your one-stop shop for all things sports. They have officially licensed gear from all your favorite teams and players from the NHL, MLB, NFL, and more. They have sports classic tees from yesteryear and beyond. Check out their full website in the link down below. When you enter the promo code Variety Sports, you get 10% off everything site-wide. Feel comfortable with your sports apparel and go over to their website now at intheclutch.com. And don't forget to use our code Variety Sports to get 10% off.
All right, we are back as Arkansas women's basketball took a trip south down to Baton Rouge, Louisiana, to take on the number 10 LSU Tigers. And, we talked about this would be a good test for this team. Well, we're still not there yet. That was what happened. Arkansas fell in this game 99-68, so a 31-point loss. Not what you like to see, but it's not the worst thing. Hey, the thing I want to see from this team is they come back and get a bounce back win. Like we've talked about all season, they've been good about moving past the loss and getting back, to their play. This game wasn't the prettiest game. There's moments where it seemed like we were starting to chip back into it, but then LSU just go on a run again. We kind of start chipping back and they just go on a run again. They're still easily one of the top 2 teams in the SEC right now. And, we'll just break down these stats quickly. Arkansas leading scorers, Samara Spencer with 20 points, Miriam Dowda with 16 points, and Michaela Daniels with 13. Still no sign of Talia Scott, so it must be a significant injury that she has that's keeping her out of this game or something that I don't know. I know probably Mike Neighbors is really wanting her back as soon as possible, but we'll just have to keep waiting and see for any more updates there. On the rebounding side of things, you had Michaela Daniels with 6, Samara Spencer with 5, Carly Keats and Miriam Dowda with both 4. And then shooting percentages, this is where kind of we've talked about it. When Arkansas struggles to shoot the ball, they're not going to win it. That's given for basketball, but this team seems to have a pattern. When they have lower shooting percentages, they struggle in games to win or even in close games. Whereas, some teams you have out there, they can shoot poorly, but at a high enough rate that they still win games. For this Arkansas team, that's not the case. From the field, they shot 27.8%, going 20 out of 72, took 72 shots in this game. When you look at their three-point shooting, 25.5%, that's not terrible. But if you look at how many they made 12 out of 47. They shot 47 threes in this game. Really, just like we talked about with the men's team, they're trying to stay in this game, so they were letting them fly from deep, and unfortunately, they weren't falling at, I guess, a high enough rate. If shooting that many, if you could maybe hit 30% of them or 31, 32, looks a little bit different, maybe not as a bad loss. And then you got to love what they did from the free throw line, 94.1%, going 16 out of 17. Would like to see those attempts higher, but you got to love the efficiency and that high percentage there.
Yeah, so my take on this game is LSU's big. That was the deciding factor in this game. Is we didn't match up as well as I would have liked, just from a size perspective. That's a lot of the reason why a lot of the threes were flying, is we were having a hard time getting down low and getting any good looks underneath. We shot pretty poorly from inside the paint area. So that was, I think, a definite cause and effect scenario on taking 47 threes. If you can hit a few more of them, to your point, yes, that's nice, and you might close this gap a little bit. But on the flip side of that, there's got to be some talk on a little bit poor rebounding and a little bit poor defensive play. And I think that is purely just due to the matchup, though. LSU has got some significant size inside, and we just had a hard time competing with that on the glass. And then from a defensive standpoint, we were losing down low more often than not. And so there's a lot of things that went into this game that we were outmatched on certain matchups that I think created the loss more so than how well we shot or didn't shoot or anything. It was a little bit more to it than just that alone. So definitely a good metric on where we are and maybe some areas we need to improve on from a recruiting perspective, things like that. We've got a good team. We do. We aren't quite as big as some teams out there, though. And yes, it's nice to be able to shoot the threes like we do some nights and things of that nature and be able to score the ball some of the ways we do. But if you run into a bad matchup scenario, sizing perspective, speed perspective, things like that, it can come back to bite you a little bit. And so this one was just a kind of a bad matchup scenario. You're going to have that a lot, especially against some of these top teams like LSU, South Carolina. It's really hard. Women's basketball isn't as spread out talent wise as men's basketball is. So, I mean, you saw it this past season with the way the transfer portal went. You had LSU picked up, I think it was 2 transfer commitments of players that were basically the number one player on their team in the previous season come down and join Angel Reese and basically made a super team. I mean, that's legitimately what happened. And there's a reason they're as good as they are. They've got a great coach, and then obviously what they've been able to do on retaining players, having Angel Reese come back, all those types of things. It's impressive, and you got to give them their due there. But I definitely think it becomes a matchup nightmare for a team like the Razorbacks, who's got a pretty good squad, but maybe not quite to that elite of a level. So good testament to where we're at and where things we can improve are. But overall, I think the state can be proud of the effort we showed in this game. Putting 68 points up on that LSU squad isn't a light feat, even though they hung almost a triple-digit game back on us. Putting 68 points on them is not anything to shake your head at all. But overall, we got a lot of areas where we can do a better job on. I think it's just going to take continued successful growth type seasons year in and year out to potentially get to that level. And then obviously the transfer portal and the NIL deals and things of that nature have a big effect in women's sports right now, whether it's basketball, volleyball, gymnastics, things of that nature. You're starting to see, some of the things that happen in football trickle on down into women's athletics, to where some of these schools that have a significant money pool to utilize, are able to create some of these very stacked rosters. So might need to see some improvement there as well when it comes to the women's athletic side of things, especially around basketball, to stay up in the upper echelon where we want to be.
Yeah, that's all true. And like we said, right now Arkansas is sitting middle, lower side of the standings right now. But I think the way this team's playing, hopefully by the end of the season, you see them finishing in that top half there. You've got South Carolina 1-2 right now, which is to be expected, where South Carolina sitting at 17-0, and LSU only has 2 losses. And then after that, you've got, Tennessee, Vanderbilt, Ole Miss, a few teams up there. So hopefully Arkansas can climb these boards and, finish in the top half of the SEC. And so we'll jump into some upcoming matchups. Arkansas's got, for the men's basketball team, schedule doesn't get any easier this week. South Carolina was probably one of the easier games we had in this front half of the SEC schedule. But now, we go on the road to a very tough Ole Miss team, under Chris Beard, his first season, and they're looking pretty good. And then you come back home versus Kentucky. And I mean, that's always a good matchup between these two teams. And I hope that's the case, as this team really gets up to play Kentucky. But like we said, with the trend that's going on, I'm not too hopeful on that. But hopefully I am wrong. Prove me wrong. That would be fantastic. But there's going to be all eyes on this game, because it was announced Saturday that College Gameday is going to be in Arkansas for this Kentucky matchup. So a lot of national attention is going to be coming from this game. Maybe Arkansas can pull out something. I don't know. We'll just have to see what Muss and the staff game plan for this one. Yeah, fingers crossed, 100%. And then on the women's side, you've got Kentucky coming to town. We opened up SEC play against Kentucky, so hopefully we can get some revenge and get a win there. And then on Sunday, they head to Missouri for another road matchup. So some big matchups coming up for both teams here. Hopefully we can come out and at least win half of them or more. Not too worried about the women's side. Men's team, like we said, I'm not the most confident in right now until proven otherwise. And so with that, we'll jump over to gymnastics, where, if you heard the intro of the show, doing big things right now. Big road matchup with number 4 Alabama, or number 3 Alabama. We came in as number 4. And this held up to the standard that it was expected out of this matchup, where unfortunately ended in a tie, not what you want to see. But they tied Alabama 197.525 all, which, is a program record for Arkansas. So you hit a program record on the road and tie the number 4 team in the country. So I don't think you can be more pleased from the effort you get there. When you talk about the individual events, Arkansas outscored Alabama on the vault 49.425 to 49.35. Alabama outscored Arkansas on the bars 49.6 to 49.3. Arkansas outscored Alabama on the beam 49.4 to 49.2. And then on the floor exercise, Arkansas outscored Alabama 49.4 to 49.375. So a big matchup. And like we said, it's slim margins, like even in the individual events, the meet did end in a tie. But you just look at how close these individual events were to each other. Very hundreds of points difference. So I think you're in store for an exciting season. Seth, what's your take here on this fantastic matchup that we had this past weekend?
I think you're going to see this happen a lot. Not necessarily the tie, but these close meets. It was this way last year. I think the SEC overall, every squad has improved their rosters and just developed. And we've got some great coaching, but a lot of other programs do as well. And I think the competition level is so high right now in gymnastics. And you're seeing it week in and week out where, we set a team record with the highest point total we've scored in university history, to follow it up the next week with another team record of the highest point totals we've scored in university history the next week. So things like that is stuff to get excited about. It's pretty impressive to see, but all these other schools are able to do the same things as well. And I think that's a testament to, kind of where we're at from a player's development standpoint, the nutrition, the exercise regimens, the technology and analytics around how often to work out, how often to not. I mean, there's so much science that goes into all of these things, that it's kind of bled into athletics and gymnastics now, that these players and competitors are on such a high level across the board on all these different university squads and stuff. The competition level is at the highest it's ever been, and I think that's going to provide for some of the best matchups you've ever seen with some of the highest point totals we've ever seen. And that's kind of been the case so far earlier in the year, and things might come back down to earth, I don't know, but it's really cool to see that happening kind of in front of us, the way that this sport has evolved just even over the past, 5 to 8 years. It's come a long way, especially just even just from a recognition standpoint. They get a lot more media attention than they ever used to, and I think that's a lot in part to what you see in the performances, the records that are being broken, the new I don't want to say tricks or things of that nature, but the new styles and approaches that some of these athletes are bringing to these events, and the new implementations they're able to add to their floor routines and things of that nature. There's so much history that's happening right in front of us in gymnastics. It's kind of shocking in a way, and I think that's what's causing some of these scores and these meets to be so exciting, causing some of the fan turnout to set records week in and week out. There's a lot to be excited about here and a lot to cheer for. So super excited that they didn't lose this meet. It's tough to kind of come out with a tie, but it does definitely give you a good gauge on where you're at and that your team is making the strides year in and year out to continuously improve.
Yeah, very true. And it doesn't hurt that you have a former Olympian as your head coach either. So that's a fantastic thing that we can add to that arsenal as well. And, I'm excited to see what the rest of the season holds. I personally will be getting out there and attending as many gymnastic meets as I can. And I'm excited. It's going to be fun. I know this year, I think they're doing 2 Pack the Bud events because gymnastics is normally held in Barnhill. And then the past few seasons, they've usually done 1 meet in Bud Walton, and it's usually packed. I went to the one last year, and they had a fantastic turnout. Well, this year they're adding an extra one to that schedule just because you have such a good turnout. Why not add as many as you can whenever the basketball teams aren't going to be playing? So fantastic things going on there. We'll jump over. Arkansas tennis has gotten kicked off as Arkansas women's. They beat Bradley 4-0 and 5-0 in 2 different matches. On the men's side, they beat Illinois State 7-0 in a match, and then they fell to Middle Tennessee 6-1. Fantastic things there. They're getting started. Arkansas usually has a fairly decent tennis program, both men's and women's. And that's all we've got really this week. We're about a month away. If you didn't catch our baseball preview we did on Saturday, go back and check that out. We got to sit down with pitcher Dylan Carter. He talked a little bit about his recovery process, how he's a little bit ahead of schedule, and he started throwing again. We break down the roster, kind of what's expectations, get insight from Dylan on what he's in the program. He gets to see these guys, and especially with him being hurt and not being able to participate as much, he's gotten to sit back and kind of see some of these guys develop, and he gives us a take on that. And this team is raring to go. Dylan says, and he speaks for the team as they're all ready to go. Hated how last season ended, that hurt, and they want to come back ready and more than ever to, make that next step and hopefully make it to Omaha and bring home that trophy. Like he said, they want to be that team at the end of the day on the mound that's lifting up that trophy. And we know Arkansas's talent level is there, and can't wait to see what happens. As we wrap up with softball, we mentioned there's high expectations here. Well, more preseason accolades came out where Arkansas had 5 players named to the Softball America's preseason top 100 players. You had coming in at highest ranked Hannah Gamble at number 40, Rylan Hedgecock number 46, Nia Carter at number 55, Bree Ellis at 65, and Reagan Johnson at 97. Several of these players, we can have highlight reels. If you remember Rylan Hedgecock, the home runs she hit last year was amazing, and she surprised everybody and came back for another season. So again, we've said it week in and week out, this is going to be a highly productive, efficient team, I believe, and it's going to be an exciting season. And as we finish up here, upcoming events we talked about, Arkansas men's basketball is going to Ole Miss on Wednesday this week at 8 p.m. on the 24th. You got women's basketball taking on Kentucky at home on Thursday, the 25th at 7 p.m. Swimming and diving takes on Kansas on the road at 3 p.m. on the 26th. Gymnastics on Friday, the 26th at 6:45 p.m. So get out there. If you're in town, have an opportunity free night. You won't miss out. It's going to be a great show. Men's basketball, like we mentioned, Kentucky coming to town on Saturday, College Gameday. That's going to be at 5 o'clock. And then Arkansas women's basketball at Missouri at 2 p.m. on Sunday, the 28th. So a lot of big time matchups coming up. Get out there and watch those if you can. If it's a home event, get out there and attend those. And don't forget to check out our channel. Like we said, we did that live preview event for Arkansas baseball this weekend. We're going to set up some other cool stuff. We're constantly doing new Hog Talk segments for you guys. The best thing that you can do, everybody says it, but it really means a lot for us to go out there and hit that like and subscribe button. That helps us help you, by producing and bringing out more Razorback content for you guys. So, as always, don't forget to like and subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, but also YouTube. Go like and subscribe to our channel there. You can catch all of our Hog Talk segments specifically on YouTube, and you can check out that live show recording on there. And thank you for listening to today's episode of Woo Pig Weekly, and we'll catch you right back here next week.